want to share, first of all, I'm originally from South Philadelphia, and I was raised outside of Washington, D.C. And yes, that introduction, it sounds like maybe I'm a millionaire, and I am not. Perception's really different than reality in the art world, and in a lot of art worlds. But I went to Yale. When I went to Yale, I amassed $115,000 in debt. That's the equivalent of about $215,000 today. I actually went there, and I was a little intimidated because I was a figurative painter for a long time, and I thought, you all are the experts here. I saw your show, it was amazing, and I thought there's no way I'm gonna show my figurative work, with you all. You're fantastic artists in that realm. But I went into Yale with figurative work, and what I did was I got out of Yale with all that debt, and my parents didn't pay for my education, and in fact, they're just starting to learn, and I'm 62 years old, to figure out and respect who an artist is today. So, but nonetheless, my husband, who's a jazz musician and political activist, who's right here, Vincent Valega, and my project manager, we've known each other 46 years. TMI, I guess you're gonna know everything about me after this. But we paid those debts off in 10 years by finding opportunities that fit. So I'm gonna talk about that today. But when I got out of school and all this debt, I had collectors calling me, not art collectors, but collectors of money. And I called my professor, who was, I can say his name now because he's passed, William Bailey. I'm sure a lot of you know his work, very still life figuration. Anyway, I said, what am I gonna do? And he said, just do your work and it will carry you. Well, right after I got off the phone, I had a collector calling me for money. So I was like, I don't know, I get that a little bit, but it didn't work for me. And I had to figure out, how can I sustain a creative life? And in schools, as fancy as they are, it's just now, within the last maybe 10 years, that they're starting to talk about the nuances of how artists sustain a creative life. I'm not just talking about financially, emotionally, physically. And it's important that we know as artists how to do that for ourselves. So I'm just gonna get started. So I'm gonna go through this quickly just to prove that I'm an artist. Okay, so when I was in college, I broke the figure down into lines because I was actually bored with painting the exterior of the figure, and I wanted to get inside the figure. And those lines became anthropomorphic images for me that now build environments for conversation. So I'm just gonna go through. So these paintings, believe it or not, are about architecture, and they're about space and moving through space. When this is a studio I moved to New York from Yale in 1991, and I had a 200 square foot studio. And I got a D in sculpture at School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what my work needed. So I started playing around with the kitschy, childlike material of, did you ever have those stars on your ceiling? Those stars or your children? I never had that, but my husband's sister did. And I discovered this stuff, and I said, what if I could use this formal language and actually make characters from this? So from that, this is at the Jewish Museum in New York City, and they were having a celebration of lights, all different religions, of artists of all different religions. And so what I learned from this is that how these lines that actually come from the figure, come from the body, can create space. So then moving forward, this is the work I'm doing now. So this is about 3,500 square feet and 32-foot ceilings, and that's my husband. I didn't have to pay him, he was the model. And that's actually what it looked like there. And then I'm just going to give you an idea too, how I started to think about too, when we show our work outside of where we live, how can we make connections with people? So at the time, this was in 2014 at the Nashville Art Museum, I did a mess of an installation. I thought it was a mess. But it was a good kind of mess to some people, because I put a sign up on the gallery walls, and I said, you know, if you want to be a part of this piece, take a picture and then send it to me and I'll have a conversation with you. I had like 5 people a week for 2 years, and they would send me these pictures, and apparently it was a hit because people got married in the space. I didn't like this so much because I think that they messed with that edge. It wasn't that, but I forgave them because they got married, okay? And then I would always write people back, but then I saw this one and I thought, this guy looks like a serial killer. I don't know if I'm gonna write this guy back. So, and in fact, you're Bud, right? I'm not gonna write this guy back. You never know who's in the audience, because I did a talk in New Hampshire, and a woman in the audience said, I know him. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I said, why don't you text him and say, I thought you were a serial killer. Are you a nice guy? Can I talk to you? And so for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna talk to him. But the point is, I started making these connections with people that evolved from the work. And then this is my latest, I just did this last summer. This is in Miami, at the Freedom Tower in Miami, which is like the Ellis Island for Cubans coming in to Miami, to our country. And so this is 1,000 square feet and a 2,000 square foot space. And when people walk in, they see themselves in there, and they can look up and be a part of the work. Okay, so that's my work. Oh, yoga classes in there. This is great. And then people come in and do performances. For me to have art activated that way in an intangible way, just like when I went and saw your show in Clarksville, I had an intangible experience with a lot of the work. That's right, I think we all hope for. Okay, so let's talk about why I'm here today. Not because, well, I'm an artist, that's why I'm here today, but I wear these hats. Okay, who is an artist today? Okay, an artist is, obviously, we can have creative thinking. Who's laughing? What did I do? I'm sorry. Creative thinking inside the studio applied to outside the studio. We have the ability to solve problems. We have the ability to multitask. We also have the ability to be able to start things from nothing. I don't think that people feel as though that they may know how much value you all have with the work that you do, how much courage it takes for all of you to make your work. Believe me, I've been all over the country, and I'll talk about that, and asking people who they think artists are today. We are a source of abundance and not a deficit. At all. We are a foundation of freedom of speech in intangible ways. We are that foundation. We give to the well-being of others through what we do, not just the work, but who we are. We are essential to documenting history, and we are more than makers. So I'm going to talk about that too. Artists lead with ideas, okay? So I want to crush the myths here right now, because these are all facts. There is no such thing as a day job, by the way, because we carry our ideas wherever we go. Doesn't that make sense? There's no such thing as a starving artist, because I think we have to eat every day to survive, right? I mean, we are not in the attic and making artwork, and then we come down for a show, and then we go back to the attic. I don't know how people do their laundry or who cooks or anything. I'm just being ridiculous here, but the point is that we are part of society. There's nothing romantic about being an artist. Now, you might say to me, well, Sharon, you're a Debbie Downer. There's a lot to be romantic about being an artist. Actually, we have so much great ability and we are in all sectors of life, that we are not separated, but we are talented in many things that we give to society. There's no such thing as competition, because we're all together. And we're all that doesn't make sense. What I mean is, we are all together as a community, but we're separate in our ideas and how different they are. All of that work that I saw in that show, everybody is very different from one another. Seriously. There's no such thing as rejection. It's a difference of opinion. And I mean that because I've served on so many juries, and it's not personal. Unless you're a difficult person, then, there's a curator here, Katie, from, I'm putting you on the spot. I would guess, I've talked to a lot of curators, and it's such a small world. If you're a difficult person, you might be recognized that way. So don't be difficult. And creativity comes in all forms. Just because you work as in administration, curation, you write books, whatever, you are still an artist. Does everybody follow me? Okay, so how do I know this? How do I know all this stuff? Well, when in 2011, again, you never know who's in the audience. In 2011, I moderated a talk at the College Art Association conference. Does anybody know what that organization is? collegeart.org. And anyway, it was called How to Make a Living with or Without an Art Dealer. And so there were 400 people that showed up. And I said, wow, it's really great that you're here, and it really sucks that you're here, because this kind of dependence on the gallery system that only serves 2% of artists all over the world. We have other options that sustain artists' creative lives. Also, we have other ways of getting through to museums, of getting through to nonprofits. We don't actually have to depend on a gallery. We are partners with them. So my publisher was in the audience and said, do you want to write a book? I said, I can't even write an artist statement. I'm not going to write a book. So you all know that, right? It's still difficult to write an artist statement. But she said, what haven't you seen out there in the world? I said, I really want artists to talk about how they sustain a creative life. And just a little bit to start conversations. So each one of these books has about 40 artists that begin conversations about what it means to sustain their creative lives, financially, emotionally, physically. And so the book, the first book, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life, sold out before it got on the shelves. I couldn't believe it. It just meant the need was there. And so, tragedy sometimes turns into possibility. So my husband and I had a house fire in Brooklyn, and we were on the road for 263 days. And I just called some of my friends, and it's not, I don't mean this to sound immodest, but the friends who actually run museums, or they're curators, directors, and I was just talking to Katie and Jana about this, that, artists and curators and everyone in our ecosystem is all the same. And oftentimes artists give a lot of power away to these curators and directors and et cetera, but you know what? They probably get dressed the same way we do. They probably, hopefully, brush their teeth in the morning, they're human. And so we had this massive tour, and it became a cult thing. So from 2013 to 2018, we went to 164 stops and met 12,000 people. And from that, man, I heard what artists need and want. And so we had huge conversations. And what happened there is I also had data that went to foundations that supported me. And I worked for foundations too, like the Joe Mitchell Foundation. I worked for Creative Capital and the Ford Foundation. And they all wanted this information to understand what artists need and want. And so we basically created a movement. These books, I will just say, I'm making money from them. I split the royalties with all the artists. Our last year's royalty was $7.25. Okay, the point of this is, and they retain all their copyright, but the point of this is to get the word out. Who are we? How do we raise the value of artists today? How do we show our work widely? How do we have conversations that are that resonate with community, that are from our ideas? So this is my latest book, Over 50. Man, it took me 5 years to do that book. And we were just in Detroit. There's 300 people that were there. And I asked the audience, I'm gonna ask you this, how many of you asked for help for your work? Just like, oh my God, just like my teeth are starting to hurt, thank you. In Detroit, 5 people answered, so you all have a little bit more. That's a problem. If people don't know what we want, we're never gonna go anywhere. So I'm gonna ask all of you, after I end this in about 20 minutes, I'm gonna ask all of you, what do you need professionally? You can't say money, that's a given. Anything professionally, think about it, I'm gonna ask you to say, because when you say what you need, somebody in the audience is gonna know what to help you and going to be able to maybe show your work, maybe have opportunities. We did that on these tours. People got jobs, exhibition opportunities, but more important, they got validation. Everybody needs validation and many, many opportunities, and we're on tour right now. Okay, and we did a small one at Wasserman Projects right after that, and you can see this is what happened. People stood up, had conversations, and I think a big part of the AWA is this strong community of women who are very strong. And you know, I'm very, very, very passionate about how us as women, people who identify as women, can help one another. Okay, so the number one key to sustaining a creative life is community, no question. And actually, I'll just share this with you. My therapist gave this to me. There's a typo in it, though. I didn't feel like changing it. I'm sorry. So this is a target, essentially, a chart where how do we concentrate our energies? Do we concentrate our energies on people we really don't know? I hope not. Do we concentrate our energies on people who don't share our values? I hope not with that either. We have the ability to determine who we have conversations with. So let's talk about your vision. Okay, has anybody asked you that? Like when you talk about your work, oftentimes I hear artists, a lot of times say, when I ask them, what's your work about? And they say, oh, I'm a painter. Okay, that told me nothing about your work, 0. So, but when somebody says, my work is about, oh, I always give this example. Anybody cat people here? Cat people? Cats? Oh, then you'll love this. I love cats. So, cat people, my work is about my pink cat, Fluffy, period. And then somebody, if I heard that from somebody like, why? Why is your cat Fluffy? Why do you love it? Because it took me through my childhood. Oh, how did it take you through your childhood? It starts a conversation. So the more you know about your vision, right? And this can happen, the vision happens too. How you paint, how you sculpt, how you make the work also shares that vision. So for example, in the show that I saw, some work was intentionally blurred, where we couldn't see something in focus. And then some were deeply in focus. And then there was one painting that had purple flowers that was deeply in focus, and then right behind it wasn't in focus. That shows what's important to us. So we have these skills that can relay that meaning. So the next question is, okay, Sharon, what are the venues and the context and opportunities for my work? Let's say you have your vision. You know what your work is about, the ideas, what they're about. Now we gotta find your partner. People who are in our community, if finding people who share the same values and language. So I'll give you a good example. There was a gallery in New York called Minus Space, okay? And it was called Minus Space for a reason, because it was all about abstraction, okay? And if I were to still do the work I did, even this sculpture work, I couldn't get into that gallery because that gallery wouldn't be interested in my work. Do you follow me? Everybody follow me? So like, also every vision, even if someone's vision is about representational work, what kind of representational work do they show? This is really important. So how do we get that? How do we get to find those people? So I love research. Does anybody like to do research? Anybody? Oh yes, we have hands. What I like about it is that I get to find out what's happening in my community. I get to find out who's doing things. And people ask me all the time, they say, well, what does it mean to research? Oh, and Sharon, this is a lot of work. Why are you giving this to me? You're just taking it away from me, my studio time. I hear that too. Excuse me, I have to take a drink after that. The thing I say is that the more informed that we are of our community, the more opportunities we have to be further in it. Makes sense, right? But also the other thing is that doing that kind of research, what I mean is to have a different hat on, to find partners that you can collaborate with. I'm not talking about collaborating, changing the work. I'm talking about, for example, a museum curator and an artist. That's a collaboration because they have a vision and you have a vision. And pulling those two things together is the harmony. But for me, it's not about the exhibition. It's about the experience of having that relationship with that person. The other thing is to be organized, because if you're doing this kind of research where you have a different hat on, where, let's say, I'll give you an example, where you're eating and you have this intentional hat on and you're flipping through a magazine, like that Plein Air magazine, which is really good. I read it the other day from getting it from the museum in Clarksville. Anyway, flipping through that museum and you see somebody whose work you love, you absolutely love that work. What I do is look at their resume and see where they've shown. Because if their work is something that you understand and you feel like you have that context with that work, sure, it's probably pretty sure that the places they've shown are going to have that same language that you speak. Is everybody following me? So being organized is really important. Also having good time management is really important. Having technology help you too. Having a good database is it's essential for keeping things together to be able to spend time in your studio. Okay, so let me just share too about your vision, okay? So I have found too, from going all over the country, that, and 3 other countries I should say, that the hardest part, I think, for artists is sometimes they can't talk about their work. They can't talk about their ideas. Now, I read the essays in the catalog. They were really wonderful. A lot of them were really to the point, very simple, very humane, really wonderful. But sometimes it may be difficult even to get to that point where you gave that essay, but for, let's say, a museum exhibition and you're very nervous and you don't know how to talk about your work, or just asking somebody, like I said, if I asked you what your work is about, how do you really talk about that? I think it's very important, like a lot of those essays in that catalog, that you be yourself, that it's simple, that you have a voice. You don't have to actually take notes from Derrida. If I read any more Derrida, I think I'm gonna die, actually. So I had enough of Derrida in my graduate program. So my point is to have, be very down to earth and know, if you can, as much as you can, what this work means to you and what is the meaning of the work. So another thing I want to just share too is oftentimes too, artists, say again, I'm sorry? Artists oftentimes don't know how to reach people, and meaning, do they send a cold call, for example? Do they call people? Do they drop off their work at a gallery? Please don't ever do that, by the way. Do they ask a friend to introduce them? Do they, what is the way in which we communicate with people that we want to collaborate with? I'm going to give you some great examples. Does anybody ever have any trouble with that? Like, you want to show your work in, let's say, this museum, the Frist Museum. How do you think that you would want to communicate? Do people feel like they wouldn't know how to do that? Anybody have issues with that, I wonder? Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I did for a long time until I was like, I don't care. I'm going to be myself, but I'm always going to consider the other person. So it is a lot like dating. The most successful artists that I know consider the people they collaborate with as collaborators. So starting out a relationship might be just going to see this exhibition right next to us and saying to Katie, wow, I really love that exhibition. If you love it, you don't want to lie, obviously, but if you love it, I really love this, and I look forward to following what you're doing. That is like a first, I haven't dated in a long time, but it's sort of like a first date, and not even before a first date. So I feel like artists sometimes, and I get these emails every single day from artists. I can only imagine what museum curators get and gallery directors. Well, I know what gallery directors get. They send them to me. Oftentimes artists say, this is my work, and that's it. They don't use any gratitude, they don't say hello, artists oftentimes don't know how to start that relationship. But the most successful artists have just solid relationships that they take journeys with people whose language that they can understand and values that they have. This is from all the data that we've collected. I will just share with you too, 80% of the opportunities I've received are from cold calls, not from picking up the phone. Please don't ever do that. I did that, it was awful. You're stopping somebody from doing something else. In my case, somebody was coming in the door from a foot surgery. I was devastated. So don't ever do that. That was a long time ago. But anyway, is just reaching out to people from the goodness of how you feel and saying, wow, I really love that vision from that curator, and staying in touch. And it's actually wonderful. It's validating, and it's informative, it's intellectual, and it always feeds into our work. So also, there's a lot of ways to start conversations too. Do any of you have mailing lists, or do you have a database? Anybody? Okay, so the rest of you must have a database. I can help you with that. That's your currency. The people that you can collect, in a sense, in a place where you can be organized, is a way of then putting those people from those times, maybe when you're eating, again, with that hat on, and putting them somewhere where you want to be able to contact them after or when you're not creating, but building that community. Now notice, I didn't say audience. A lot of people say, who is my audience? Well, audience is the definition of audience is like right now. I'm speaking to all of you up here, and you're down here and you're listening to me. That's an audience. But community is exchange. There are people, but you get to pick them. So I would just say also practical information regarding timing. So after all of you leave here, I'm hoping that you will go and actually meet with a lot of your peers, a lot of people here, and have conversations about what do you need? What do you think you need? Do you want an exhibition? With whom? And doing that research together, and it works all the time when artists do that with one another. So I would also say, just something very sad. I want to share. I don't know if this has happened to you, but I hope it doesn't. Someone that I did a lot of research for my last book, like I said, 5 years. And sadly, someone has waited her whole life, she's in her 80s, for one gallery. That makes me really sad. Because sometimes that gallery may not be the fit. And I don't know if, I can't speak about dating again, but when I remember dating, I remember sometimes the gentleman looked really attractive, but then when I got together with him, he wasn't very attractive. So sometimes the perception is really different than the reality in getting into that relationship with one gallery. And by the way, a lot of also successful artists have a multiple of galleries because everything is local. Even New York, Los Angeles, they're all local, meaning that people living there and always visiting there have a presence. Okay, so we're almost finished. So are you getting ready for your needs? Please talk about them, because if I know them, maybe I can make some connections for you too, and maybe we can utilize this wonderful symposium to start to be able to exchange and lift our own careers up. So one thing that I learned, and my husband gave this to me from a book, was actually an essay, but this also a book written by Ben Casinocha. He said the best way to get a powerful person's attention is offer to help them. And you know what's interesting? I started doing that like maybe 15 years ago. I started asking gallerists, what can I do for you? One person turned white. They were like, no artist has ever asked me that. That's really pathetic, actually. Okay, so let's go into follow-up and maintaining relationships and actually generosity. I live out of gratitude, compassion, and empathy. And in fact, I have a tattoo that says gratitude. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed by gratitude. To me, writing thank you notes or correspondence extends a conversation. So I did a workshop for Creative Capital for many years called The Approach, and it was basically a lot of this information where you're able to reach out to people without anybody, without a referral, and to be able to have successful relationships over time. And the point is, let me go back. You can read this if you want, but in short, this person is Jeff Musser, who's an artist. He said, he wrote this to me. Basically, he said, I could tell you a bit of news. I received a difference of opinion, not a rejection, from a juried exhibition, and he wrote to the curator and thanked them for their consideration. And sadly, this person said, Dear Jeff, thank you for your letter, all the more appreciated, because this is the first time an artist has thanked me for being shortlisted for an exhibition. It's a human thing. So, I'm big on that. Oh, I'm going backwards, sorry. So in conclusion, how do we do all of this? How can we do all this and still do our work and still make our work in the ways that we want to with a lot of freedom, but yet we want to show our work, we want it to be out there in the world, we want to have conversations. I love the idea of 25 exhibitions in 25 years. In my mind, when I saw that video, I got a little nauseous about the percentage, only 13%. I couldn't believe it, even though it shouldn't be surprising to me. But I would love to have 25 exhibitions every year for 25 years. Not me personally, but so many women. So very important to have time management, asking for help, have technology help you, meaning that have just a simple database or just even a spreadsheet or something where you can put this research, where you find people that, whether it be a curator or a writer or anybody that you feel that speaks the same language as you do and your work and your values. Putting that somewhere where you have access to that so you can be in touch with them when you're not creating. I have a database that reminds me every day who I need to talk to. I don't even think about who I need to talk to when I'm in my studio, because I rest assured that I'm not going to miss a grant application, I'm not going to miss an application for an exhibition, because it's all going to be in there. Being disciplined, don't worry about what other people are doing. Your ideas set you apart. So I always say this too, sometimes the universe has a different plan for us, okay? So I'll give you a personal example. So the New York Foundation for the Arts is a major, they're a fiscal sponsor, but they're also an organization that gives grants every year. And 4,500 people apply every year in different categories, whether it be sculpture, painting, etc. So I applied 15 times for a NYFA grant, which is only $7,000. Now, in New York, $7,000, it took me maybe a minute to write 3 checks, okay? But still, it's for the validation, and also a lot of granting organizations help their fellows. So that you're then part of that community. And I wanted to be a part of that community. So finally, on the 15th time, I applied for a different category that wasn't a popular category. So what I did was, I didn't apply in painting, because that was the most popular category. And I thought, what if I applied in like architecture, or environments or installations, like my other work? I got the grant because less people applied for that, but also my community, my work was out there enough that they recognized the work and its value, which I sent them all thank you notes. I'm just saying, I didn't stop after that first one. The 15th time I got that. Did it change my life? Not really. It didn't really change my life. But it gave me this security that I was a part of my community. Okay, so ongoing themes are, it's really important to cultivate opportunities from connecting with your community. I think every one of you here may have also ideas for opportunities to share with others. So for example, Sharon Butler, and anyone who paints, I would definitely write this down. There's a blog called 2 Coats of Paint. And Sharon Butler is an artist who started that blog years ago because she was isolated in Mystic, Connecticut, and she wanted more opportunities from her work and from her community. She wanted to get out of Mystic, so she started this blog. And now it's an award-winning blog that does reviews of artists' work all over the country, strictly, really just painting. And film. But that's her husband does the film. But she really does, 2 Coats of Paint, the source of that is painting. Anyway, another thing she did was she realized that she had a lot of privilege. So she shares her studio for a week. She gives over her studio for a week for someone out of town to take on her studio, to have it as a residency and a showroom, because she believes in that exchange. And then oftentimes the artist who takes that studio will give their studio, let's say in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or wherever, to her. So then there's all these different people coming to see the work. And that is sharing of privilege and creating opportunities that actually really works. So your community actually starts here. All of you, because you have so many different ideas in your work, you're profoundly talented in the technical aspects of how you execute your work, and you have your lived experiences. You all hold ways in which you can assist one another. If we hold ourselves only to the people that are gatekeepers, we will always wait like that person for that one gallery, which she won't probably get before she dies. I hate to say that. And I also want to say, too, as a loud, strong woman, loud and clear, hopefully, that being a woman is a strength. I'm going to read from my notes. And being loud and strong, I don't wear makeup either, believe it or not. I have a nice hair color, I have to say. But other than that, I don't wear makeup. And I've been squashed a lot in the art world for many, many years because I was so loud and strong in a way. And even for my mother, I have to say, because she came from another generation. And it's very painful, actually. But when I didn't care and I was myself and realized that coming out of generosity and gratitude and not having to ask for permission, we don't need permission to do anything, that my whole career went up, way up. When I was 38, I had to wait till I was 38. And all I can say is also be responsible to others, be realistic, and you can sustain a creative life. And it's up to you and nobody else, actually, which there's a lot of empowerment in that. So I titled this talk, Living Sane and Creative Life, Empowering Women Artists, because we have all the tools that can do this.